welcome. In today's episode, we are going to explore the humoral immune response. But what is the humoral immune response? Well, a lot of bacteria like to swim around in the extracellular spaces in our bodies, and those bacteria can cause infection. So we need to protect our extracellular spaces by the humoral immune response. B cells in this case are functioning as our antigen presenting cells, aka APCs. Let me not forget to let you know that B cells are actually in charge of secreting antibodies. This particular immune response is responsible for transforming B cells into plasma cells, which then produce those antibodies for a specific antigen. This response takes place in the blood and lymph. Now, we had to give you all a brief explanation before we get into today's episode, where my three lovely ladies show you what goes down on Immune Street and Humoral Ave. They will be taking you to their favorite bar called Immunity and show you a little twist on how their favorite drink is made. Now, before we get into the live action, I have to say, on arrival at the bar, we normally order the same drink, which I have to say is a process. So, we like to talk the bartender into allowing us to make it ourselves, and we nickname the drink Activation. And the steps go like this. This empty glass here represents our antigen presenting cell, APC, on a normal day. Unfortunately, an invading bacteria is phagocytized by this cell. The green stuff on the ice cube represents lysosomes that contain digestive enzymes that then combines with the phagosome to make antigens. The lemon juice being squeezed is an example of the processed antigens combining with MHC class 2 proteins and are presented later on the surface of the APC. My lovely friend Emily is displaying that exactly the antigens are combining with the major histocompatibility protein, which I mentioned before as MHC class 2 protein, and it's presented on the surface of the APC. The whole point of the humoral immune response is to create antibodies within the process to fight off the same bacterial invasion in the future. Think of it as creating an army, but in this case, that army will look like a couple of glasses of activation. Before we continue, let's take a look at antibodies real quick. So, antibodies in this case will neutralize foreign invaders, stopping them from damaging the host cell. Antibodies are part of a protein called immunoglobulins and require a specific structure to allow antigens to bind to them. The antigens themselves have unique determinants called epitopes on them, so essentially the T and B cells will attach to them if recognizable. Now, before we get into some more live action, let's look at some of our T cells here. So once the APC has on its uniform, the helper T cells and CD4 as a co-receptor will aid in recognizing this display on the antigen. Lemon juice represents the MHC and the antigen. The antigen has fragments that attract T cells to bind to the MHC class 2 antigenic peptide complex, which in this case is represented by the brown sugar. So those T cells right here are binding to the cell surface as my friend Emily turns the glass. At this point, the T cells are considered naive and the binding triggers the APC to release cytokine interleukin 1, which activates the T cell. Activated helper T cell now releases cytokine interleukin 2 to stimulate the naive T cells to multiply and B cells to form B cell copies. During this process, memory T cells also form to spread into the tissue for the future. B cells also change into plasma cells that will produce the necessary antibodies for the future invasion. The red drink that Emily is pouring is representing the B cells turning into the plasma cells, which will then release their antibodies, as we will see in the next clip. And as I mentioned before, these B plasma cells actually are secreting these antibodies that match accordingly with the original antigen, and this in the end is going to then start the complement process, which during the complement cascade, the antibodies and the phagocytic cells clear away the microbes and the damaged cells by lysis. In this blue bottle, the clear liquid represents complement, and as we can see, the complement cascade begins as it's pouring into the plasma cells that have released those antibodies. Now the complement is going to finish the job and allow all the bad bacteria to be eaten up. And more specifically, during complement, auspinization takes place when the IgG molecules bind to a specific epitope, allowing the antibodies to signal phagocytosis of the bacterium. Now, in the next live action scene, we're going to see what happens when the same bacteria enters the body again. And this time, instead of the ice cube, we're going to be using dragon fruit cubes. But I just want to let it be known that these are the same bacteria. We just used a different substance this time. Now, because the body now has those memory T and B cells, the process is already mapped out and known. So it follows the same procedure, but this time quicker because of those memory cells and the proper antibodies matching with the proper receptor on them that automatically know what to do to kill these invading bacteria so they do not cause infection to our body, especially in those extracellular spaces that need to be protected. Patients who have defects within their humoral immunity are susceptible to the reoccurring bacterium that enters the body. So unlike a healthy humoral immune system, their body won't recognize the same antigen and it'll keep entering the body, causing the same infection. Lastly, before this episode is over, I'm going to include the actual formation of our activation drink that me and my friends concocted. And then this episode will be done. Thank you guys for watching. See you when we see you. Start whenever. Just go around the edges first. Yeah, here we go.
Sure, he still got butter on it.
Okay, you can.
Just to spread it with more.
I am right.
That looks so cute. Oh, I kind of finished.
Go.
Okay,
Yeah, baby. You would have to.
Yeah, it looks nice when it drops in. It's like slow mo, real.
Like a lot. Let's do this.
Guys, wait a moment.
To take the picture for this one.